everyone, it's John. Welcome back to the channel. Good as always to have you along. I'm here with a review of Supergirl. And I'm gonna say the quiet part out loud because a lot of other people don't want to, but this movie wants to be Guardians of the Galaxy so bad, and it shows. But not only that, I'm here with a review of Supergirl in ScreenX. Craig Gillespie's and James Gunn's Supergirl is officially here. And to be honest, guys, I was really looking forward to seeing this because this feels like a movie that was made for ScreenX. Well, it wasn't made for ScreenX, but we are getting a really big release that was actually made for ScreenX, so stay tuned for that. Because let's face it, a movie like Superman and Supergirl in this case deserve to be seen on a large scale. And what larger scale than the 270-degree panoramic experience? But how does ScreenX really hold up between the cosmic space western that is Woman of Tomorrow? Now, the second half of this video is gonna be my spoiler-free review. First, we need to dive into this premium format experience. Because choosing how you watch a movie like this can totally change your perception on it. And I have no delusions. I know the casual moviegoer might see ScreenX and think of it as a gimmick. And I'll be the first to admit, sometimes that is the case. For a movie like this that treads heavily in vast, desolate, alien landscapes, does adding massive peripheral imagery actually enhance the cinematic immersion? Or is it just distracting? But to answer that, we have to see how a movie was actually built from a production standpoint. But what makes Supergirl an interesting test case for something like ScreenX is the fact that director Craig Gillespie's commitment to practical filmmaking. Unlike modern big screen blockbusters, instead of trapping his actors entirely in a digital green screen void, the production physically built massive, tangible sets at Warner Brothers Leavesden Studio in England. And this is including a really cool set piece, you guys. It's the completely sprawling tactile architecture of Evelyn Square. When you combine the physical depth with cinematographer Rob Hardy's distinct visual style, he loves using heavy anamorphic lenses that give a compressed cinematic weight to the edge of the frame. You get a very specific image layout. In a standard theater, that frame feels very tight and focused. But for ScreenX, the peripheral walls are filled in using digital VFX extensions that extend outward from Rob Hardy's original frame. Take the space bus sequence, for example. The production crew built a literal, physical, rattling spaceship interior packed with practical prosthetic aliens. In a standard theater, this is a cool scene, but in ScreenX, when those sidewalls kick on, the narrow spaceship layout wraps completely around your seat, making the claustrophobia feel incredibly real. You aren't just watching characters trapped on an alien transport, you feel stuck on the bus right there with them. But to get the most out of this, you have to understand the inside baseball knowledge of how ScreenX actually operates because it trips a lot of people up. First, let's talk about the 30 to 40 minute formatting lock. ScreenX is an adaptive format, meaning the entire 180-minute runtime is not going to use the three side walls. When characters are just standing in a room talking, the side screens completely shut off so you can focus on the performance itself. The wings are specifically reserved for high-angle cosmic travel, massive planetary vistas, and intense cosmic action. Second, you need to understand the multi-projection grid. While the main center screen uses a high-end laser cinematic projector, the side wings rely on a matrix of separated wall-mounted commercial projectors. Because those side walls are painted drywall or acoustic fabric, not specialized silver screen material, there is a natural drop-off in color, saturation, and contrast. So that's just something to know if you're coming into this. If you've seen some of my other reviews, there are scenes in a lot of these movies that really lend themselves to this experience, and I would say don't really heavily rely on those sidewalls, and it's just really completely for immersion. Honestly, watching Super Mario Galaxy or even Mortal Kombat 2, I didn't see as much of a drop-off as I did with a movie like Michael. When you do get immersed in some of these high-octane action scenes, it is super awesome and really, really immersive, and the color saturation is always going to be a little bit faint on the sidewalls, but sometimes it really was noticeable here. But I would say the biggest thing to look out for, and I have only seen it once, is what I'm calling ScreenX clipping. What do I mean by that? If you look at the two side walls, this is supposed to be a 270-degree panoramic experience, and it is, don't get me wrong. But once again, comparing Super Mario Galaxy and Mortal Kombat 2, I did not run into this problem. The clipping is Do the side projectors align and match up visual center to the middle screen? Why is this a problem if they don't? Because the immersion is lost. For better or worse, ScreenX is all about tricking your brain. If the side walls match up with the center screen perfectly, your brain is better equipped to handle the transition between your center eyes and your peripheral vision. As you will see in the example, for Michael, there were many times where these side wall projectors did not match up with that center screen, leaving a black bar on the top sides that really takes you out of it. And if you have experienced ScreenX, you will know exactly what I'm talking about, because when those side screens kick on, boom. It is immersive, it is captivating, and it really draws you into whatever action sequence you are about to dive into. When those side screens kick on and they do not align with the center, it automatically sticks out like a sore thumb, and you are kind of taken out of the film, which is the opposite of what you want from ScreenX. Now, this could be a proprietary thing depending on the theater you go to, but it is something to look out for. Does this warrant a complaint to the theater? Would you get anything out of it? Maybe they would reimburse you or give you a credit. Coming into ScreenX, double check your walls. I'm hoping they line up for you, because when everything is working how it should, it is such an awesome experience, and I do think it is worth your time and money. And if you are looking for advice on how to make the most out of your ScreenX experience, I put together the ScreenX Survival Guide. It has great information on where to sit, what to expect, and certain things to look out for. I've been to a few of these screenings, so please learn from my mistakes and take it for what it's worth. I'm here to help. But the real question is Supergirl and ScreenX worth your time and money? Some of these action sequences, because they were built with practical sets, and every time our titular Supergirl, Millie Alcock, is flying through the air and punching out alien bad guys, it is super fun, and it's a level of energy that really shines in ScreenX. And I said it up front, this level of immersion and experience can really change your perception on the film itself. For this, I will admit, it probably did elevate some of those action sequences. However, ScreenX, in order to save this movie, would have a lot of heavy lifting to do. But that's not to say the film is completely without merit, and I always like to start off with the good. And like so many others have stated, I did have my reservations a little bit on the casting of Millie Alcock as Supergirl. David Cornsweet was such a great casting for Superman, and I really enjoyed that Superman movie that came out last year. For this, she definitely shines and is a surprise. Early on in the film, feels like she is just not into it. And this is based on the Women of Tomorrow comic book series, where she is actually written that way. But from what I have read and what I've seen, unfortunately, this does not live up to the source material. But as we progress through this story and you learn more about Kara and her emotional development, her backstory, you start to see her evolve. She becomes a lot more charismatic, and I do love the dynamic that she does have with David Cornsweet Superman. He shows up in this movie, and it almost seems like a little bit of a Hail Mary to help give it a little more clout. Jason Momoa is really fun in this film as Lobo. I would have wanted to see more of him. I also like the dynamic that him and Millie Alcock have together. Also, her surrogate sister chemistry with Ruthie in the movie was really nice as well. That and the practical sets. And I would say that's about it for the positives. So now we get into the negatives. I don't know how everyone else is gonna feel, but I am really over the superhero music needle drops. We get it. It's tongue-in-cheek, and oh, they're fighting, and it's a song that shouldn't make sense while they're fighting, and it does, and we got it. It's been played out, and I'm just kind of over it. I don't need it. I definitely don't mind some humor in my superhero movie, but it has to start being smarter, and they are relying on these old tricks over and over again. The other comparison we get for this film is that it is a cross between Guardians of the Galaxy and Mad Max, and that is an insult to Mad Max. I get it from the story perspective and narrative. Sure, it does make sense, but I just don't feel like it reaches those cinematic levels by any means. But the real kryptonite for Supergirl is something that I remember Roger Ebert saying about a great action movie. A great action movie is only as good as its villain. If you have a great villain in an action movie like a Hans Gruber or a Heath Ledger Joker or a T-1000 even, you have already the bones for a very strong, compelling action film.
You complete me.
And that is what's really lacking with Supergirl, because if you don't have a good threat or a good nemesis to fight against, then you've really kind of lost the audience interest. The stakes never feel high in this movie. There are great action set pieces, there are little bits of chemistry that work, and there's some dialogue in here that's very fun. But when it's all said and done, without a good villain, without a super compelling story, you just walk out feeling kind of blah. I don't know if they really stick the landing because it doesn't really feel impactful. Nobody comes into a movie like this hoping it will be bad. And maybe some people do, but I don't. I want to come in, have a good time, and I am rooting for this movie to succeed. Ultimately, I thought this movie started out with a lot of great potential, and I was excited to see where it was going. As it starts to move along, there is not much there. There is a framework here for a great movie that unfortunately does not deliver. But I will say this movie clocks in an hour and 48 minutes, and it's a lot shorter than some of the other blockbusters we've been seeing this summer, and I at least appreciate that. So if you're asking me if I was entertained for an hour and 48 minutes, I totally was, and I do think ScreenX is still worth an experience like this. If you are just looking for a fun action movie and you want to experience ScreenX, go for it. But if you want to save that premium ticket experience, wait for Spider-Man. Why? Because there are scenes in Spider-Man Brand New Day that are being specifically shot for ScreenX. So stay tuned for that review, as that's going to be super exciting to report back on. But as for Supergirl, that is my review. Let me know in the comments, are you going to see Supergirl? Are you excited for this movie? Better yet, have you seen something in ScreenX? A lot of you have already let me know in the comments, and it's been really fun to go in there, read what you have to say. If you have yet to subscribe, please consider doing so, because we do a lot of really fun things here, like exploring different screen formats, on-location events, and much, much more. We're here for you, and we'd love to have you part of the community. And with that, thanks so much again for coming along, and I will see you guys at the movies.